Hi, my name is Jim Ryan, and I'm the new instructional designer here at EWU. My job here is to take a look at the programs, courses, and people from a different point of view, to see how all these Lego pieces fit, and to imagine how I can help put them together differently to make something new and amazing. Welcome to the Play to Learn podcast.
Today, I'm meeting with Tyllia, Senior Lecturer in Art and the Art Program Director for the Department of Fine and Performing Arts at Eastern Washington University.
So, hi, I'm here today with Tyllia from the Art Department. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you again.
Hello, nice to see you.
So, can you tell us a little about what you do here, your title, and what's going on here at the Art Department?
Yeah, I've been teaching here for about 16 years, and mostly I teach kind of foundation art classes. So that's everything from digital art to drawing to right now I'm mostly teaching ceramics, but then a lot of kind of art history, art appreciation along the way as well. And I'm serving now as the program director for the art program.
Oh, nice. Very cool. So art is a very active learning environment, naturally so. So can you kind of explain how that goes into the whole learning process?
Yeah, the key is, I think, our studio classroom setups. They're set up to be working laboratories, working studios, working places where students can use their skills, but there's readily equipment available, tools available, supplies available. So as long as you set the stage and you provide materials, and then, of course, prompts, which can be varied from more direct to more open-ended, you'd be amazed what students will create if given time and a little bit of direction.
So how can you, it might be very clear to some people like, okay, this person started at point A and now they're at, point Z, but what is kind of the story arc of that process?
A lot of trial and error, a lot of space to fail spectacularly and learn from failures. The secret in art is a lot of people don't see the failures or the things that don't work out or the things that end up in the trash or the things that didn't quite manifest the way you wanted to. And so there's a lot of just doing the work, but then lots of reflection after, like, was it successful? What parts were successful? What parts were not successful? What would you do differently next time? And so it's an iterative process. So the students are constantly building on their skills, constantly learning new things through failure, but also through success, and then building upon those successes to kind of get better at what they want to achieve at. And what's really interesting, a quarter is so short, it's 10 weeks. But if I have a student, say, focusing on wheel throwing, you can see improvement within those 10 weeks. If they're, at it every week, sitting there, slowly improving, they can see the arc by the end of the 10 weeks. And that's a huge motivator because we point at the thing they did at the beginning of the quarter and go, look at this thing, and then something they finished at the end, and they can see the difference. They can see the growth. And for them, that's a light bulb moment for those students that they go like, oh, if I put in effort, time, and work at it, I will get better at this thing. And I think that's kind of addictive.
Yeah, because you can really see those results. Like it's visual.
Yeah.
Or, auditory, I guess, depending on how you want to do it.
Depending on the output, yeah.
And art really incorporates a lot of the other studies that would be available here at Eastern. It involves math, it involves science. One of the things that I think of most, and I can actually see the picture over here, is from the Mona Lisa. It was Leonardo da Vinci. And the golden mean, the golden ratio. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about how art has been really married with all these different other subjects throughout history and how the students are able to kind of integrate that?
Yeah, art was the visual media for a very, very long time. It was paintings, it was drawings. And so it's a way to transmit knowledge visually. Certain areas of knowledge, certain aspects really need that visual component for people to understand them. And so artists were kind of very much teachers throughout history. Ways of explaining the universe, ways of explaining spirituality, ways of explaining the human condition. And so it really allows artists to be students of humanity in general and all of the endeavors of humans, which includes science, which includes technology, which includes just the humanities in general. And so artists would tend to wear many, many hats. So one reason I love ceramics is because it allows me to wear my scientific hat more often, right? It's a lot of math, there's a lot of physics, and a lot of chemistry. And my students who are maybe dual majoring. I often get dual majors in science and the STEM fields, and they really like seeing how the abstract, maybe thinking about how chemicals react, actually manifest in color in the kiln. And so you can actually see that one-to-one relationship between like different oxidation states of, say, iron in a kiln. So like iron can turn green, it can turn brown, it can turn yellow, and it's all based on chemistry. And they can see that in real time, and then they draw some connections. Now, also students who are not in science, but maybe they're in creative writing, or maybe they're just into self-expression and art itself, and they use those same skills, but with very wildly different outputs. But it bridges the gaps of knowledge between the different disciplines, and it allows artists to kind of float between them. And artists are kind of interesting in that way that we get very curious about the world around us. We're, at the end of the day, artists are observers. And so we love observing these kind of things all around us and then trying to articulate them or re-emphasize them or reframe them in a certain way that maybe they haven't been seen before or often.
I really connect with that in a big way. And I think something art can do is, if you are working on a problem and you've been working on that same problem for so long, and you go and try and do something creative with art, there are those moments where you have that connection, where you see where those two things link up, and then you're able to go back to that problem and solve it because your brain was in a more creative mode other than the rote mode that it was in before. It's like changing into high gear and then being able to reconfigure everything and then see things in a new way.
Absolutely. And that's something that artists have to do. It's a flexibility in thinking and a flexibility of observation. I mean, the classic trick when you're learning observational drawing, and we do this in our drawing classes, is you draw a still life from one angle, then you get up and you move. And you look at it literally from a different point of view, and everything starts looking different. It's all the same stuff, but it's different. We carry that mindset forward for everything. Well, what if we turned it upside down? Well, this painting might look better on its side. What if we take this abstract problem that we have in our institution or our company or something, and let's turn it on its head? Let's approach it from the opposite way and see what happens. Artists love doing that sort of thing because they have to take apart the problem and then put it back together in a different way. By seeing things in a different way, by allowing flexibility and creativity of seeing those things a different way, new strategies are unlocked, new ideas are unlocked, but also you're able to communicate to maybe collaborators around you who may be experts in a different discipline, a way of looking at something they never thought of before. So the weird thing about art is, in other disciplines, as you progress, you kind of get narrower and narrower in focus.
Sure.
But artists get wider and wider and wider in focus many times. While maybe they're honing specific skills in a medium, so maybe you're working on technical skills in painting, ceramics, or photography, our interests start bridging other disciplines into ecology, into the natural world, into the cosmos, into why we are here. So it gets bigger as students, as artists, we keep working.
Yeah. Interesting that you mentioned Cosmos, because I was listening to the Star Talk podcast today with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I can't remember the name of the guest that he had on, but he was an English astrophysicist. And this guy, I think he has been on TV before, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, in some, Discovery Channel type of, presentations. But before he started going to school for being an astrophysicist, he was in a rock band. And there's actually been a number of these astrophysicists that have been in rock bands, which is really weird. So he was in a rock band in England, and he had a couple of hit songs with his bands, and got signed on the record label and made some money and whatnot. And then he started his astrophysics career, and then he joined another band, and he had another hit record that actually got used as Tony Blair's campaign song.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I guess it came back around and was used for that. But then, so there's all these connections, and I really think that the science side can benefit from having those students cross-train, I guess you would say, in art, so that they can get that flexibility that you're talking about, expand their horizons and not get so hyper focused on one little thing that they can't see the rest of the world through that little slit that they're in.
And I think it's that interest in other things that really helps some artists make those connections. So if I'm reading about ecology on one side and what's happening to our planet, and then I'm reading about maybe psychology and how selfish and tribalistic our culture has, I mean, we start making some interesting connections. And so I think artists really love, at least most artists I know, really love kind of dancing across disciplinary boundaries. And I think not a lot of other disciplines do. They tend to stay in their lane a little bit. And I think artists kind of really don't have a lane in a weird way. And so we have that freedom to kind of move around a lot. There's no pre-described path in our society for an artist. Every artist finds their way through a different rocky terrain that is very individualistic and windy to their own practice and where they were born and where they grew up and who they know. And it has a lot to do with socioeconomic status and all this kind of stuff. But we have to kind of blaze our own path. But if you're, say, a CPA, it's a little more linear. And so I think that's one kind of gift that we have is that it's not laid out for us. We kind of have to figure it out for ourselves a little bit, which is a blessing and a curse. Let's put it that way.
It can definitely be challenging. So what actually got you interested in art? What was your inspiration?
Tricky. I've always loved art. I love the output of art, mostly because my brain just feels good when I'm working creatively. There's something that my brain just kicks in. So that's always been an aspect, but there's always been pressure to do something or to have a career or something that, is maybe economically more viable. There's that parental pressure, social pressure.
Absolutely.
And both my parents are in the sciences. So I thought, okay, I can do science. So a very long time ago, I thought, okay, I'll either be a math teacher or a science teacher because that's what my parents were, right? But then I discovered when I started taking chemistry, and I took it from my dad in high school, which was an interesting experience, really lovely, but I kind of hated it. I loved learning the periodic table. I loved learning the stories of the elements. I love kind of the narratives behind their naming, how they were discovered, their interactions. They're very rich in kind of information. But when it came to like balancing equations or, doing Lewis structures, I just thought it was kind of boring, very abstract. But then lab day would come around and we get to do stuff. And then I got totally excited again. So what I discovered in this process is I love materials, especially chemistry. I love the interaction of materials, but I don't necessarily love the discipline. So I found the discipline in art, and I found it specifically in ceramics. So at that time, I was also studying ceramics in high school and black and white photography, both heavy in chemistry. I became the black and white photo darkroom technician. So I was mixing up the chemistry, learning all about it. At the same time, learning how to throw, learning how to glaze stuff, learning how to fire stuff. And I realized in high school that the knowledge I loved could be applied to a different discipline that I also loved. And so that's when I kind of made the switch in my mind in high school that I'm going to study art. So I took a ton of art classes and just immersed myself deeply, deeply. But I always still have that love of physics and chemistry that was probably put there by my dad, but also just viewing the world around us and being curious about the world around us and how it works has always been a very big interest to me.
Being here for the last 16 years, what are some of your favorite success stories for students?
That's a tough one. That's a hard one. We've had students go on for MFA programs, and that's always great when they continue their career and they get accepted in those programs because they're difficult to get into. And so we've had pretty good success with that. Beyond that, there's just been some amazing work produced that blows your socks off, that you don't see coming, that surprise even a jaded professor, right? So you see a lot of student work, and student work tends to have some certain characteristics, but then sometimes a student will just touch on something really unexpected, really of the moment that surprises even, the most jaded of yours. And we've had a few moments like that, in our BFA program and in other programs in art, where the students just really make beautiful, personal, but also vulnerable poetic pieces that talk about something larger than themselves. And so those are really positive moments. And then other than that, Probably just working with my colleagues. I think that we get along pretty well, and that's been actually rewarding because one thing that they don't tell you as you're an art student, some professors tell you, but when you leave, there's no one else in your life once you leave school who will talk as deeply and intensely about art as either the people you go to school with, your peers, or your professors. When you get out in the real world, there's not a lot of people who care that much about the deep, deep, nerdy trench that we dig for ourselves in creativity. And so there's a lack of community. And so we try to instill as much of that as possible, but then encourage our students to try to continue on either with their peers, stay in contact, or other community arts organizations they can join to kind of keep those connections. Because I can't talk glazes with my partner, I find it super boring, but I can talk glazes for like 3 hours with my ceramicist colleague,
So you're now the director, and so it's kind of like all on you at this point.
Right, I have a team though.
Yeah. So you have a great team. Where do you see the art department evolving to over time?
We're going to get our tendrils out into a lot of spaces. So we're trying to make it very clear that we exist. Because I think for a long time I would always get, oh, so you're with the design department. I said, no, art is separate, it's different, but very much related. So we're just trying to make our presence known on campus, but in a positive way. But also spread that message of that part of what makes places special is the artwork or just the things in the spaces that you interact with every day. And so we're trying to bring more art, more murals, more site-specific things just to campus. We're also trying to partner with different departments that make sense. So maybe English department, working with them for our writing about art class. So that English is obviously experts in technical communications and writing, and our artists need that. Our students need that to apply for grants, to apply for opportunities. So we partner with them. We're working on a partnership with theater right now to teach our students about kind of movement and performance, especially those of our artists who are going to become teachers eventually. Being able to kind of quote unquote act or perform is actually part of the job description, because you got to get up and talk in front of people and, be confident and project and all of those things. And then we working with theater teaches for us a cross-list fiber and textiles class. So a lot of our students teach or learn how to do basic fiber arts and kind of soft sculpture through them. But we're always looking for more ways to connect. And of course, we have a pretty good working relationship with our design department.
I was talking with the engineering department, Phil Apple, over there, and he was saying that they really wanted to reach out to other departments as well and have students realize that they can come and use the facilities that they have there. They have a wide variety of sewing machines, of different printers that can print all kinds of different, either posters or whatnot, and like metalwork, they got a lot of things to do metalwork with. I think the desire to grow outside of the silos is there within the departments. I think it's just a matter of connecting everybody up and making the movement between them a little bit more fluid.
Absolutely. And that's something that we're interested in working towards. I've mentioned that to some of my faculty, and we're kind of planning certain equipment asks and needs. And, at a certain point, we don't need equipment if we can borrow equipment, so we can spend that money elsewhere, right? And so that's what I'm really hoping that we can do. And I think engineering is a perfect fit for us. It's just a matter of getting our two cultures to talk. And I think that's going to be the initial work that we have to do, which is going to be tricky, I think, but doable ultimately.
I think it's going to be very doable because, the engineering students, at least when I went over to the expo that they were doing last week, a lot of it is, showing off the products that they're making. But the product, it might be a physical product, but it doesn't necessarily look fantastic.
Right. Right.
So there has to be some aspects of art and design and composition that goes into how they build things or how they make things,
Absolutely. And I think that's something that would really benefit their program as well, as having that kind of aesthetic stopgap. I think a lot of our students can help with that. It doesn't take much to elevate. Often it should be the right colors, often that can really help. But just understanding color harmony, often that can help, and basic form, on which our students get pretty well versed very early in their artistic career here. So I think there's a natural skill exchange there, because what our students have problems with are the highly technical aspects. Certain students take more to it than others, but other students, it's a hard ask to get them to even do certain things on computers, or let alone trying to program like a vector line for a CNC machine or something like that, right? And so if they had someone to help with that technical lift, they can come with those ideas.
Chris, I can't thank you enough for just taking the time today, just to meet with me, but also to record this. And I think that EW has so many amazing resources and people in it. And I think it's going to be really good to see everybody working together more.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be really awesome. That's the one day I've been looking forward to, is a little more direct connection. Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah.